self-perception that relies on other people's praise will also be vulnerable to their criticism. But unshakable confidence is anchored in your personal truth. So I was talking earlier today with one of my dear friends about the concept of judgment, because I was sharing with her about a reel that I had seen that was talking about the fact that essentially judgment that we receive from others is actually just a mirror of judgment we have for ourselves. And as I was pondering this, I thought, there's an element of truth to that for a variety of reasons, but the one I'm going to touch on today has to do with the fact that, let's assume that someone is judging me because I'm purple, right? Not purple. But if somebody is judging me because I'm purple, that doesn't resonate with me because I don't see myself as purple. So whatever, that's a them thing, right? So this actually comes back to healthy boundaries. And you guys know I love a good diagram. So undoubtedly I will pop diagrams up as I mention things. But when you're talking about healthy boundaries, you get to own your thoughts, your actions, your responses. And so that's in their sphere of influence. If they're in a place of judgment, if they're in, have a perception that is misaligned, that is on them, that is in their sphere of influence. But in your sphere of influence, you don't have to receive that, right? So if someone is saying to me, you're so purple, and I just think your purple is ugly, I'm like, okay. That's on you, right? So I don't have to receive that judgment. It's not messing with my self-perception or my self-esteem because I don't choose to receive that, right? And so then I was kind of tying that idea together with the concept of praise and criticism, because this was a really powerful concept that I had heard, I don't know, it's been decades now, where they were talking about the fact that if you allow yourself to be moved by the praise of people, that you will also be moved by their criticism. And that's very true. If you are relying on the positive input from people around you, if that moves you, if that gives you that, oh, I feel so good, and I feel whatever, if it gives you that boost, then the same thing is going to happen in the reverse when people will have criticism, which inevitably they always do, because people as a whole tend to be fickle, right? So they feel one way this time and then they feel a different way a different time. And so we really have to really anchor ourselves in our personal truth. What do I believe about myself? And a few days ago, I was talking about our inner critics, and I was talking about softening that internal voice. And part of the reason that's so important is because at the end of the day, it is between you and source, who you are, what you believe about yourself, that is for you to decide. That is in your sphere of influence. Coming back to healthy boundaries, you get to decide that. Nobody else gets to decide that for you unless you let them. And so this can really come back to societal norms or biases that parents may have, things that, as children, you may have, or as a child, because obviously you're not more than one child, but as a child, as children, we, have a tendency to absorb those things around us, but we're not at a place yet where we are cognitively aware of the fact that we get to choose what becomes part of our belief set, right? And so this is part of where shadow work becomes so important, and why we've been talking about it, because this is why we have to, I think I said take out the trash, but the reality is it's a little bit like hoarding. When you have lots of stuff, the stuff may all have some value. It's whether it has value in that instance and whether it is helpful to you in that instance. And if it is not, then it is something that it can be released, okay? And so in the same way, when we are carrying belief sets from, that we have picked up that aren't things that align with us, but we're never stopping to question it again. We're never stopping to think do I actually feel that way? That is a really important question to ask yourself. Is this really how I feel? If someone's reflecting something, even if, say someone is reflecting something something to you, implying that, that you're worthless or devaluing your work. As an artist, we experience this all the time. If you are someone who creates things, like, people are constantly saying, well, that's too expensive. And most of the time what they really mean is that they can't afford that and they wish that they could, right? So, or they don't understand what went into it, and so therefore they perceive the value as being inflated. But again, this is sphere of influence. That's outside their sphere of influence. Now, if I choose to take offense at the fact that they've said to me that, my prices are too high, if I choose to internalize that and think, oh, they don't think I'm worth it, they don't think my art is any good, and, again, we get to choose the stories that we tell ourselves. And again, this comes back to polarity. And again, I'll give the diagram, but this is, it is really important to be careful the stories that we tell ourselves, because if somebody is reflecting from their own bias, having not done the shadow work, and again, that's the thing, once you begin to do the work, you begin to recognize when other people perhaps maybe haven't and need to. Not that it's your job to tell them that, just like be aware. And then it helps you to be like, okay, I don't have to take that on because that really is theirs, But when you're choosing your the polarity of your perspective, that's a tongue twister, the polarity of your perspective, like, you don't have to take on their negative bias. Like, even if they're throwing it at you, you get to decide what you're going to do with it and decide, no, I don't care what they're saying. Like, I know my value, I know what I'm worth. And if they don't believe that I'm worth it, then they're not my people. Like, that's not my audience then. My audience is somewhere else, because my audience is going to be people who understand that I have value and what I'm sharing has value. And that's something else, and that's probably a topic for a different day, but I really wish that we were more intentional to teach children that it is not your job to make everybody like you. That's never been your job, never. And if they had managed our expectations from a young age, I think life would have been a lot easier, because I think as a youngster, we spend a lot of time being hurt because people don't like us, rather than realizing, oh, they're just not my people. And that's okay. That's okay. So anyway, coming back to judgment, like, you get to decide. You get to decide. And when you have that deep, innate sense of self-perception, which usually, frankly, comes when you recognize, and forgive me because I'm totally going to get spiritual here, but when you understand that you are one with Source, because again, we've just talked about the 9 levels of consciousness. We're talking about how there's, oneness, and then this perceived physical reality that we experience, where we have this perception of individuality. So we get to have this experience of individuality. Like, once we have that revelation that we are in fact connected, right? That we are part of Source, then truly when we are in that deep sense of knowing, then we have essentially what acts as an armor of light. And then when people are saying things to us, it literally just pings off of it. It pings off of it. It's not going to penetrate, because we know who we are, and that's unshakable. And that's a beautiful place to be. And I'm not saying that I'm there yet, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And I hope this encourages you to be as well. Have a wonderful day.